Hi everyone, welcome to another crochet tutorial. Today we're going to be working on Granny Square number 2 in our Crochet Along Granny Square series. So if you grab your hook, grab your yarn, let's get started. So we're going to be starting with a magic circle. So we're going to wrap the yarn around our fingers and we're going to insert our hook in the loop in the middle, pull some yarn through, and we're just going to hold that loop in place. Then we're going to yarn over and then pull that yarn through the little loop we've had through our stitch, and that makes our magic circle. So now we're going to stitch 16 single crochets inside of our circle before we tighten the magic circle up. So now that we've finished our 16 stitches, we're going to just pull on this little tail and we're going to tighten up the circle, make it nice and tight so that we can move on to row number 2. So I'll just finish tightening this up real quick. There we go. Grab my yarn and we're going to insert our hook into this first little stitch right here, and we're going to insert it through both loops and slip stitch, but I didn't get both loops, so let me get both of these loops. There we go. Okay, so now we slip stitch and we're ready for the next row. So now make our chain 2, and in this first little stitch right here we're going to be making 3 double crochets. So yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, that's 2 and 3. And then we're not going to stitch into this post that's directly above our work. We're going to the one right next to it, and we're going to do a front post double crochet, and then in the next stitch we skip this little space, and in the next stitch we make 3 double crochets, 2 and 3. We go to our next post and we make a front post double crochet, and then see this little space right here? That's the stitch we're skipping right here. We're going to move on to this next full stitch, which is easily accessible, and that's where we're going to make our 3 double crochets. So this is how you're going to work the rest of the row. So you're going to do your 3 double crochets and then your front post double crochet, and 3 double crochets, front post double crochet, until you get to the end of the row. We're reaching the end here. We've got a last front post double crochet, so we've got that one little stitch left. So we'll make our front post double crochet, And then in that very last stitch, we're going to make our 3 double crochets. So we've got 1, 2, and our third one. And this will complete our second row. Here we go. And now all we have to do is just join the row. So we're going to make that front post double crochet at the very end. So it's the very first post from the row we just finished. And that way it makes it pop out and it makes it a front post double crochet. And now we just insert our hook into the stitch above it and make a slip stitch. And there we go. Our next row is complete. So now we're going to chain 2 and we're ready to move on. So for this next row, in this first stitch, we're going to stitch 2 double crochets in that same stitch. And we move on to the stitch next to it and we crochet 1 double crochet, and then stitch next to that we make 2 double crochets, and then we take the front post, here's stitch number 2, okay, and now we go on to that post that we've been making. We're going to go ahead and make another front post double crochet. So we slip in under it and we make our front post double crochet, and then in the stitch right next to it, see how we've got 3 little stitches in here? So the first one is 2 double crochets, and in that middle stitch we make a single double crochet, and in the one right next to that we make 2 double crochets, and then we finish off with our front post double crochet. So this is how we're going to work the rest of the row. So in those 3 stitches, the first stitch is 2 double crochet, the middle one is a single double crochet, then we have 2 double crochets, and then we work our front post double crochet. So we're finishing off the row here, so we're just going to finish with our front post double crochet. So yarn over, pull through, and yarn over, pull through. Great. And in this first little stitch right here, we're just going to make a slip stitch. So insert our hook and then just pull through both of those loops, and that finishes off the center part of our granny square. See, and we have 8 front post double crochets. If you don't have 8 front post double crochets, you might have to go back and fix it because we need all 8 of them in order to make this an even granny square. So now we're going to chain 3 and we're going to skip a stitch. So skip this one, go to the next one, make a single crochet and then chain 3, skip a stitch, go into the next one, single crochet and chain 3. That's what we're going to do for the rest of the row. So it's chain 3, skip a stitch, slip stitch in the second one, the one after the skip stitch, and then chain 3. So I'll see you when we get to the end. So we're going to finish off our row here. I'm going to insert my hook and single crochet. Oh, no, it's the end of the row. We have to slip stitch, sorry. So let me back up a bit. So we insert our hook in the stitch right below our chain, the very first chain we made, and we're going to slip stitch. And now we're going to chain 5. And we're going to make a puff stitch in our next chain space. I'm just going to call it a little gap. So we make our puff stitch. There we go. Yarn over and pull through all of our stitches, little loops, close out our stitch, and we chain 5. And in this next little gap, we're just going to make 2 single crochets, move on to the next gap, 2 single crochets, and in our third gap, we make 2 double crochets, and then we chain 5. Move on to the next gap, make a puff stitch. There you go, close out our stitch. Chain 5. Move on to the next stitch, and we're going to single crochet 1 stitch, single crochet a second stitch. Move on to the next puff, or the next gap, excuse me, and make 2 single crochets. Move on to the next gap, 2 single crochets, and then chain 5. And the next gap we make a puff stitch. And we close off our stitch and chain 5. Move on to the next stitch, we make 2 single crochets. And the second little gap, 2 double crochet, or single crochets, excuse me, so 2 single crochets, go into the third gap, 2 single crochets, chain 5, and then the next gap we make a puff stitch, close out our stitch, chain 5, go to the next stitch and make 2 single crochets, next gap 2 single crochets, third gap 2 double crochets, chain 5, in the next gap we make a puff stitch, go close out our stitch, chain 5, and then our next stitch we make 2 single crochets, the next one we do 2 single crochets, and then again 2 single crochets, and then we chain 5, in the next stitch we make a puff stitch, chain 5, and a single crochet in the next stitch, or 2 single crochets, excuse me. And the next one 2 single crochets, and last one 2 single crochets, and we're done. So now if you just leave a nice long tail, go ahead and cut that and just weave in all of your ends, and you are done with Granny Square number 2. If you have any questions or any comments, be sure to leave them in the comments below. If you don't know how to make a puff stitch, let me know in the comments and I can make a beginner's video tutorial to show you how to make a puff stitch. But hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching and have a great day.